We all know those days on the calendar that are there either to honor, to celebrate, or to create awareness for. Those common ones that we all know are like Mother's Day and Father's Day. But there's other days that are on the calendar that are quite interesting. Come to learn that there's a National Eat Ice Cream for Breakfast Day. All right, I made note of that to make sure I remember that now next time that comes along. Or how about this one? National Sneak Some Zucchini Onto Your Neighbor's Porch Day. It's August 8th. There you go. There's so many of them that are interesting. I'll do one more. National If Pets Had Thumbs Day. It's March 3rd, right? Like, what does that even mean, right? Like, what do you do on March 3rd? If I grew up on a farm, so I love animals. I've mentioned before, though, even though I love animals, I'm not the biggest pet person. And it's not uncommon for someone to say, "Come on, Father Mark, wouldn't you love to have like a pet dog at the rectory?" Usually, I just stare at them, but I think from now on, my new response will be, if you can find a dog that has workable thumbs, right, that I can train to do laundry and the dishes, like maybe I consider it. The church also has these days on the calendar or weeks to create awareness for it. There's Poverty Awareness Week. There's Vocations Awareness Week. This week in the church, it's NFP Awareness Week. And if you're like, what in the world is NFP? Hence, the church has a week for it. So back to what NFP is in just a minute. As your pastor the last 3 years, I hope that you can see in me how hard every week I try to show you, try to communicate to you that the gospel is good news. Right? That God, out of his goodness, out of his infinite love, created us for the purpose for us to share in his life. That God is liberating. Right? That his ways are liberating, and they're meant for our human flourishment. You notice now, like the way that I preach, how I often bring in articles or studies, things from the culture, right? And that's a lot of extra work. But I do it because I care so much for you. Like as your pastor, I really love you. Even those of you who aren't the biggest Father Mark fans, like I hope that you know that I genuinely love you. And I do those things, that extra work, in preparation for the homilies. I do that because I want to hold up for you things in the culture that are not for your flourishment. They're not for love. Right? And maybe there's no bigger spot where that is glaringly the case than in the area of sexuality. And the church's teaching in this area is also good news. It's not puritanical, but rather what the church wants to do in this area, it wants to bring one's sexuality underneath the umbrella of love. And what you see is clearly like the culture in this area, by the fruits of seeing the rampant pornography, the hookup culture, like it's just very clearly, that's not human flourishment. That's not love. And so the reason why this particular area comes to mind this week is because this past Thursday marked the 55th anniversary of a letter written by Pope Paul VI called Humanae Vitae, which is Latin for on human life. And in Humanae Vitae simply reaffirmed what the church always taught. And that is that contraception is an action that is contrary to the genuine love between a husband and wife. See, many people wrongly think that this is a Catholic-only position, and they're surprised to learn that every single Christian denomination up until the year 1930 held this. Every one of the reformers, Luther, Calvin, All the reformers held that contraceptive was harmful to married love. Because God's design in the marital act is to make a total and complete gift of oneself to the other. And in contraception, that doesn't happen. Because we hold back from the other that which is the most amazing gift that God allows us to participate in, and that is the gift of procreation. The humbling and wild reality that the creator of life designed it so that in the marital act we become co-creators with God. Pope Paul VI, in this letter, he said that if contraception was going to be widely embraced by our culture, he predicted a number of things that were going to happen. He said there would be an increase in fidelity within marriages. He said there would be a general lowering of morality, especially in the youth. And he said men would continue to more greatly objectify and degrade women and see them simply as an object of pleasure. All of those things have come true in spades. Now, this is not to say that a couple can't look at their situation due to finances, health reasons, or other reasons, and prayerfully together as a couple say, I don't think the Lord is calling us right now to have more children or to have children. Spacing children and discerning family size is legitimate. There's this misconception, right, that the Catholic Church thinks that, everyone must have 15 children. That is not true. The church actually calls this responsible parenting. She just encourages parents to be generous and open to life. But discerning family size is legitimate and not a sin. But the means by which it is done makes a difference. Which brings us back to what in the world is NFP, Awareness Week. NFP stands for Natural Family Planning. And unlike contraception, which seeks to control the gift that God has given us to be co-creators to new life, NFP embraces the fullness of our gift of sexuality. And it looks at when the wife is fertile, and if the couple decides prayerfully that God isn't calling them right now to have more children, then for those days they refrain from the marital act. Conversations the last couple of weeks with people, both men and women, that I've had of telling them the fact that I'm not looking forward to preaching on this. To a T, they've said, no, Father Mark, you have to preach on this. You have to tell them the benefits of NFP. Telling them the benefits that couples experience with practice NFP, that it's effective, that with science and what we know now with science, that if used properly, it's 99.7% effective. That it's safe and natural for the woman. That it builds joyful marriages and promotes communications amongst the spouses. But the white elephant in the room is I don't practice NFP, right? Of course. And so with that, I'm going to do something a little unusual for us. Is I'm going to invite Emily Kelly forward to give a witness in how NFP has benefited her marriage, and her family. So if you could please join me in welcoming Emily Kelly.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Father Mark said, my name is Emily Kelly. I'm a parishioner here at Notre Dame with my husband, Tom, and our 3 young children, Kathleen, Oliver, and Leo. You'll find us here most often on Sunday mornings, usually in a cold sweat while we're shushing and swaying our lively, loud crew. We moved to Clarendon Hills just about 2 years ago. We live just a couple of streets over from the parish on Waverly and have very quickly found our home here at Notre Dame. Natural family planning has unexpectedly become one of my greatest passions. It has affected my life profoundly, and not as many might imagine. I first learned to chart a method of NFP while I was single, in my early 20s, and in nursing school. Some mystifying health concerns kept bringing me back to the doctor, and all but one prescribed me the pill. I resisted. With all that I knew, I couldn't accept that the pill was the right answer, that it would bring me the true healing that I deeply desired. I was then blessed to stumble upon a medical practice grounded in a particular method of NFP, which was truly science-based and would almost certainly help me to dig to the roots of my medical questions. In learning to chart my cycle, I learned more about the female body than I had in any nursing class or clinical experience throughout my 4 years of school. And as I learned about my body and my reproductive cycle, I came to understand and appreciate myself as a woman. I came to see that I was both uniquely and beautifully created by a good God, and I deserved to be treated as such. It was a 5-year journey to healing for me, and in hindsight, there are many instances that felt like God's hand directly reaching down into my life. All that I learned about myself and my Catholic faith in that time was its own kind of marriage prep, and it made it much easier for my husband and I to decide to actively practice NFP within our marriage. Practicing NFP with my husband has only increased the blessings, both literally and figuratively. By the grace of God, where we fully expected to meet challenges conceiving, with the right medical care, that didn't happen to be the case. And our 3 beautiful children are a testimony to that. Aside from the gift of new life, which is never going to be a guarantee, we have gained all the more relationally and spiritually from practicing NFP. While we will fully admit that there are challenges and sacrifices, we have found that in practicing it, grace truly abounds. NFP has helped teach my husband and I how to be self-gifts. It reminds us daily that the vows that we made to another make us partners on the journey to heaven, and heaven is achieved gradually in each small death to self. NFP guides us in living out our vows fully, as God intended, which means giving ourselves freely, totally, faithfully, and fruitfully. It reminds us to abandon ourselves and our wills to God, to look to Him as the ultimate creator. While vulnerable and initially hard, communicating about my window of fertility, and therefore our shared fertility, has deepened our emotional and spiritual intimacy and helped us to see one another as whole persons, physical, spiritual, intellectual, and emotional. The freedom and the security that has come from honoring our vows in this way and communicating truth to one another through first our words and then our bodies has been immense. It gives us a deep sense of knowing the other. Contrary to popular opinion, NFP by no means requires that a couple bear children endlessly or irresponsibly. Rather, it invites you into a shared relationship with the Lord, wherein honoring one another's bodies and knowing your shared fertility, you as a couple discern prayerfully, rationally, and lovingly what is God's will in the present moment. God will not abandon you or forsake you in this process. Now I realize fully that every woman and every couple has a unique experience in this regard, and that it is exceptionally personal. I pray for all of you in this church, whatever your journey may look like, whether of fear and pain, infertility or miscarriage, unexpected or untimely pregnancies, or an abundance of life and a very busy household, that you may consider the beautiful plan that God has for your life and the way that living out and practicing NFP may either heal or enhance that. The church in this matter, I promise you, is not against you. I invite you to consider the opposite, that as a woman and as a married couple, the church is wholeheartedly for you, wanting for you health, wholeness, and the greatest version of yourself. If I or the church can support you in any way, please know that we are here. We know that it is an emotional topic, but I would be more than happy to have a conversation, and we would love nothing more than to accompany you on the journey that is NFP. Thank you.